Recurring themes. To try to extract a sustained and coherent argument from the meditations as a whole would be an unprofitable exercise. It is simply not that kind of work. It would be equally fruitless to try to read autobiographical elements into individual entries. To take 9.42 as referring to the revolt of Avidius Cassius, for example, or 10.4 as a reflection on Commodus, all the more so since so few of the entries can be dated with any security. This is not to say that the Meditations has no unity or no relationship to Marcus's own life, for it has both. What unified it is the recurrence of a small number of themes that surely reflect Marcus's own preoccupations. It is the points to which Marcus returns most often that offer the best insight into his character and concerns. One example that will strike almost any reader is the sense of mortality that pervades the work. Death is not to be feared, Marcus continuously reminds himself. It is a natural process, part of the continual change that forms the world. At other points, it is the ultimate consolation. Soon you will be dead, Marcus tells himself on a number of occasions, and none of it will matter. Cf. 4.6, 7.22, 8.2. The emphasis on the vanity and worthlessness of earthly concerns is here linked to the more general idea of transience. All things change or pass away, perish, and are forgotten. This is the burden of several of the thought exercises that Marcus sets himself. To think of the court of Augustus, 8.31, of the age of Vespasian or Trajan, 4.32, the great philosophers and thinkers of the past, 6.47, all now dust and ashes. This theme is not specific to Stoicism. We meet it at every turn in ancient literature. Marcus himself quotes the famous passage in Book 6 of Homer's Iliad, in which the lives of mortals are compared to leaves that grow in the spring, flourish for a season, and then fall and die, to be replaced by others. 10.34. He would have recognized the sentiment in other writers too, from the melancholy Greek lyric poet Mimnermus, who develops and expands on Homer's simile, to the Roman lawyer Servius Sulpicius, writing to his friend Cicero on the death of the latter's daughter. I want to share with you something that brought me not a little consolation, in hopes that it might have the same effect on you. On my way back from Asia, on the voyage from Aegina to Megara, I gazed at the lands we passed. Aegina was behind me, Megara before me, Piraeus on the starboard side, Corinth to the port, towns which flourished once upon a time and now lie fallen and in ruins before our eyes. And I said to myself, Alas! And will you, Servius, not restrain your grief and recall that you were born a mortal? Believe me, the thought was no small consolation to me. This is not a point modern grief counselors would be inclined to dwell on, but it is one that Marcus would have understood perfectly, and its appeal to him casts light on both his character and his background. Marcus may have been a Stoic, but he was also a Roman, influenced not only by Zeno and Chrysippus, but by Homer and Virgil. Virgil is nowhere mentioned in the Meditations, and in a Greek work could hardly be quoted or alluded to, but there is a note of melancholy that runs through the work that one can only call Virgilian. Other concerns surface as well. A number of entries discuss methods of dealing with pain or bodily weakness of other sorts. When you have trouble getting out of bed. Begin several entries, 5.1, 8.12. A persistent motif is the need to restrain anger and irritation with other people, to put up with their incompetence or malice, to show them the error of their ways. Several entries focus on the frustrations of life at court, nowhere more present than when Marcus tells himself to stop complaining about them, 8.9. He contrasts the court against philosophy as a stepmother against a mother, to be visited out of duty, but not someone we can really love, 6.12. Yet the court not need be an obstacle, it can be a challenge, even an opportunity. One can lead a good life anywhere, even at court, as Antonius showed, 5.16, 1.16. No role is so well suited to philosophy, Marcus tells himself, as the one you happen to be in right now, 11.7. A more subtle clue to Marcus's personality is the imagery that he prefers. It is worth noting, for example, how many images of nature occur in the Meditations. Many readers have been struck by Meditations 3.2 with its evocation of nature's inadvertence in baking bread or ripening figs, olives, and stalks of wheat. Metaphors and offhand comparisons in other entries evoke the pastoral and agricultural rhythms of the Mediterranean world, with its flocks, herds, and vines, its seasons of sowing and harvesting, its grapes drying slowly into raisins. Some of these may be stock examples, but even a stock example can be revealing. One can hardly read a page of Plato without tripping over the helmsmen, doctors, shoemakers, and other craftsmen who populated ancient Athens. Such figures are much rarer in Marcus. The image of society as a tree whose branches are individual human beings expresses an important Stoic principle, but the image is developed further than one might expect and informed by what might be personal observations. You can see the difference between the branch that's been there since the beginning, remaining on the tree and growing with it, and the one that's been cut off and grafted back. Affection for the natural world contrasts with a persistent sense of disgust and contempt for human life and other human beings, a sense that is difficult to derive from, or even reconcile with, Stoicism. As P.A. Brunt puts it, reason told Marcus that the world was good beyond improvement, and yet it constantly appeared to him evil beyond remedy. The courtiers who summoned him are vain and obsequious, while the people he deals with on a daily basis are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. 2.1. One of the most frequently recurring points in the Meditations is the reminder that human beings are social animals, as if this was a point Marcus had a particularly hard time accepting. The gods care for mortals, he reminds himself, and you, on the verge of death, you still refuse to care for them. There is a persistent strain of pessimism in the work. The things we want in life are empty, stale, and trivial. Dogs snarling at each other, quarreling children, laughing and then bursting into tears a moment later. Trust, shame, justice, truth, gone from the earth and only found in heaven. Why are you still here? 5.33. Images of dirt appear in several entries. The world around us resembles the baths. Oil, sweat, dirt, grayish water, all of it disgusting. 8.24. If Marcus contemplates the stars, he does so only in order to wash off the mud of life below. 7.47. And the objective analysis Marcus prizes often shades over into a depressing cynicism, in the modern sense of the term. Disgust at what things are made of, liquid, dust, bones, filth, or marble as hardened dirt, gold and silver as residues, clothes as hair, purple dye as a shellfish blood, and all the rest. 9.36. The human body itself is no more than rotting meat in a bag. 8.38. Despise your flesh, a mess of blood, pieces of bone, a woven tangle of nerves, veins, arteries. 2.2. Perhaps the most depressing entry in the entire work is the one in which Marcus urges himself to cultivate an indifference to music. 11.2. As one scholar has observed, reading the Meditations for long periods can be conductive of melancholy, and even those who love the book cannot deny that there is something impoverishing about the view of human life it presents. Matthew Arnold, whose essay on the work reveals a deep respect and affection for Marcus, identified the central shortcoming of his philosophy as its failure to make any allowance for joy, and I think this is a fair criticism. Marcus does not offer us a means of achieving happiness, but only a means of resisting pain. The Stoicism of the Meditations is fundamentally a defensive philosophy. It is noteworthy how many military images recur, from references to the soul as being posted or stationed, to the famous image of the mind as an invulnerable fortress. 8.48. Such images are not unique to Marcus, but one can imagine that they might have had special meaning for an emperor whose last years were spent in warfare, and a journey far from home. 2.17. For Marcus, life was a battle, and often it must have seemed, what in some sense it must always be, a losing battle. There are also a handful of points in the text where we have glimpses of a different frame of mind, most obviously when Marcus refers to the gods. From a Stoic perspective, of course, God or the gods, the terms are used interchangeably by many ancient writers, are merely conventional terms for what we might equally well call nature or the logos, or providence, or simply how things are. Marcus stresses the benevolence of this power. What is divine must be good, surely, but it is clear that he also ascribes to its actions the implacability with which orthodox Stoic doctrine endows it. It is not easy to see why one should pray to a power whose decisions one can hardly hope to influence, and indeed, Marcus several times seems to admit the possibility that one should not. 5.7, 6.44, 9.4. It is all the more surprising, then, to find Marcus elsewhere suggesting a more personal concern on the gods' part. The final entry of Book 1 is the most obvious example. Here, Marcus indicates that the gods have aided him quite directly, through their gifts, their help, their inspiration, just as they have others. Cf. 9.11. Their help is curiously concrete. Among the things for which they are thanked are remedies granted through dreams, including the one at Keisha, 1.17. The text is uncertain. The gods also assist other people, he reminds himself, just as they do you, by signs and dreams and every other way, 9.27. That Marcus himself did believe deeply in the gods, not merely as a figure of speech, but as a real force in his own life, is suggested by his refutation of those who doubt their existence. I know the gods exist, from having felt their power over and over, 12.28. How is this personal relationship with the divine to be reconciled with the impersonal logos of the Stoics? The question seems to be played out in the dialogue at Meditations 9.4. But those are things the gods left up to me, protests one voice, to which another responds, and what makes you think the gods don't care about what's up to us? Marcus himself may not have fully recognized or acknowledged this conflict, but its existence may point to a half-conscious awareness that the answer Stoicism offered was not in every aspect satisfactory.